Hello and welcome to another episode of Coffee Break Blogging. Now, a quick little personal aside here before we jump into another episode. And today we're going to be talking about starting and launching a podcast. But if my calendar calculations are correct, by the time this particular episode is released, my family and I will actually be heading out on a vacation. And so we're actually going to be going out in the RV. We're going to be gone for a few weeks, heading up into the New England area, New York, Boston. We may cross the border, go up into Canada, hit Niagara Falls, that type of area. So we're going to be out in the RV kind of doing our thing for a few weeks here. Now, a couple of reasons I bring this up. One is because in the last episode where we talked about starting a podcast of your own, I talked a big point there about consistency of that podcast, how important it is. Well, I'm practicing exactly what I preach. I'm going to be in my RV with my kids for the next few weeks, but yet this podcast, and starting with this one, is going to keep on going. And so that's the big thing. It's going to keep on going. I'm going to pre-record these things before I leave, and they're going to continue to drip out while I'm gone. Okay? Consistency is very important. I would probably lose momentum if I just took off for 4 weeks and didn't have any episodes coming out, okay? Now, the second reason I mention it is, of course, if you'd like to follow along and kind of see what we're doing, I'd be happy to have you do so. And we're going to be doing that over on Facebook, actually. This is not something that's businessy, so it's not going to go on the Blog Marketing Academy, but you can actually head over to Facebook. If I've never invited you to connect with me on Facebook, come connect to me at facebook.com/Risley. That's facebook.com/RISLEY. That'll take you right to my personal Facebook profile. And you can friend me up, or you can just follow me over there. That'd probably be the easiest route. You'll still see everything if you just follow me over there. And because it's, personal type stuff, it's not going to go on the Blog Marketing Academy page. So facebook.com/Risley will be the way to go. Okay, so let's move right into our topic of the day, which is starting and launching your own podcast. So let's say you just listened to episode 96, you decided to move forward with a podcast. What do you do? Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to do a little bit of planning on the show itself. Now, there are 4 things that I want to mention here. First one is the title of your show. You do need to come up with a title of the show. Now, the big thing is that you want to make sure that it's got, a keyword phrase in it of some kind, but it is also brandable. It's something that could roll off your tongue, be repeated by word of mouth, and be a brandable thing. That was something that I looked for with the whole coffee break blogging. I called it coffee break blogging because it's got the word blogging in it. That was important because lest we not forget that iTunes is essentially a big search engine. Okay? And it works on very simplistic search engine principles. And so you putting keywords into stuff like this does definitely matter. So it's got the word blogging in it. Now, the whole coffee break idea was just because I like coffee. Secondly, because these episodes tend to be shorter. They're more like a coffee break. Okay, so that was the idea. So when it comes to naming your show, you need to come up with something that's brandable, that can roll off the tongue, that can kind of stand on its own, and yet it would also be obvious what it's all about. Okay. Secondly is the show description. This is going to go inside of iTunes, and you definitely need to put some thought into what that show description is. It should be keyword rich as to what your show is going to be about. Because when people are searching for podcasts on something that they're interested in, again, iTunes is a big search engine. And so if you've got those keywords in there, it's going to make a difference. You also are going to want to have keywords inside the actual titles of your episodes. But of course, the show description is pretty important. So now, one little thing that you can do is go into iTunes and search for podcasts that are already talking about the same general subject matter that you intend to talk about and see what they've got in their description. I mean, feel free to model it, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, don't copy them, but you can use it for ideas. It's kind of like having a swipe file. Now, if you want to go for the ones that are, a little bit more popular, that might make sense, right? Because the more popular shows, obviously, they're doing something right. so you can look at what their show description is and get some ideas. The third thing that you need to do when it comes to planning, and I talked about this in the last episode, and that is to plan out the actual episodes. Now, when you're first starting out, you definitely want to put more planning into the first few episodes, because when you launch it, you want to be able to release a bunch of episodes in pretty much rapid fire. And I'll go over in a minute why that's important. But so it goes beyond just the first few episodes, though. You want to have a plan moving forward for a while, longer than you're going to sit down and record at the beginning, because that will allow you to be consistent. And that's really, really important. And the fourth thing I want to mention here with regard to show planning is the podcast logo, the actual artwork that's going to show up inside of iTunes. Now, you want to have a really nice piece of artwork done, in my opinion. People do judge a book by its cover, quite literally, and they're going to judge a podcast by your cover art, quite literally. So this is not the time when you should, play amateur hour. Okay. So if you don't have the skills to create a nice, piece of artwork for your podcast, I would recommend that you hire somebody to do it. At the very least, go over to Fiverr, Fiverr.com, and hire somebody over there to do it. Now, your results will be a little mixed with Fiverr because it's freaking $5. What do you expect? But if you have no photo ability whatsoever, you might be able to come up with something pretty decent over there. But you want to have something that's of the right dimensions. I don't even remember off the top of my head what the current dimensions are. They're probably really big, like 1400 by 1400 or something, because it needs to work well in a Retina display, which is what the iPhone and the iPads have now. But have a nice professional piece of artwork done for your podcast logo. You probably want to incorporate your face in it for branding purposes. Obviously, the show title, maybe some kind of a little byline. And, think of it as a branding piece. It should exist by itself and be pretty self-explanatory what the heck that is. Okay? Now let's move into the podcasting equipment. What do you need to actually get started? Now, I will say that a lot of podcasts, including myself, we use fancy stuff. And some people have gotten a lot fancier than me. But I want to tell you, you don't need that stuff to start. Don't think that your podcast is going to be more successful if you go out and throw down a few $100 to get started, okay? Because you don't have to do that. When I first started podcasting, I did it with a blue Snowball microphone put out by a company, I think it's called Yeti or something like that. It's because they've moved on from that one to one that's called the Blue Yeti, and it's just a much better mic. And you could buy those all over. I think they probably have them at Best Buy or in the Apple Store. The Blue Yeti is a pretty affordable and very nice sounding microphone. Now, you can use a different kind of USB style microphone, but you do want to test it out, maybe read some reviews, because USB microphones are kind of all over the board. Some are good, some not so much. All right. Now, a USB microphone will be your simplest one because you can just plug it into the back of your computer and you're good to go. If you want to get a fancier microphone that some audiophiles say it sounds better, you would go with one that actually uses a standard jack. I forgot the name of that darn jack right off the top of my head, but it's got like 3 or 4 prongs on it, and you can't plug it into a computer. You've got to plug it into a soundboard, into a mixer. And that's what I do. I use a Heil PR40 microphone, which is about a $300 mic. It's sitting up on a stand, which is attached to the desk here. I've got a pop filter on it, which makes it so where if I say the letter P or something, you're not going to get hit in the ears. I've got a little doodad here, which protects the thing from vibration. So I've done the whole 9 yards here, but I've built up to it over time. And the whole thing does plug into a mixer. Now, you don't have to do that at the beginning. As your podcast gets more traffic, perhaps you will decide to upgrade. At the very beginning, I think Blue Yeti, something of that caliber will work just fine. The big thing here is that audio quality definitely is important. Don't cheap out on the audio quality. Don't just like use some audio app on your phone and talk right into the built-in microphone. Those kinds of things are not going to cut it. Don't hit record on your laptop and talk into your built-in mic because it's going to sound like crap. You want to have a nice mic. At the very low end, get a USB headset mic where you at least got the mic right next to your mouth and make it sound good, because that is a really important component of a podcast. If it's not easy to listen to, nobody's going to. Okay. And in terms of audio editing, there's a bunch of PC options out there. I'm on a Mac, so I'm using GarageBand. But if you don't want to spend a dime or you're not on a Mac or anything, go and grab Audacity. Completely and totally free. It's open source, and you can totally use that. You could do all kinds of really cool stuff with Audacity. And there's lots of tutorials out there on YouTube or lynda.com or whatever to show you exactly how to use it. Excuse me. See, by the way, another lesson, best not to cough in the middle of your podcast, but that one hit me really quick. All right. Now, when it comes to hosting the podcast, you're going to probably use Libsyn, which is Libsyn. It's short for Liberated Syndication. So it's libsyn.com. It's podcasting hosting. Now, you don't want to use Amazon S3 or something like that, in my personal opinion. Although it might seem like an option. The problem with S3 is that you do pay for your bandwidth. So it'll start out really cheap and you think everything's awesome. But if your show grows and gets some legs, it could get to the point where your bandwidth bill actually becomes cost prohibitive, okay? So the good thing about Libsyn is that it's unlimited bandwidth. I think the only limitation is how much you upload in any given billing period, which you're probably not going to hit. And then after that, you can have unlimited downloads on your show and your cost stays the same. Okay, so that's Libsyn. Now, in terms of hosting the podcast and setting it up with your blog and the feed and all that beautiful stuff, I would recommend you do it right on your WordPress blog using a plugin called PowerPress. And PowerPress is completely and totally free. Just set it up, and they've got a bunch of screens there that will walk you through setting up the entire thing. Okay, that's pretty much as deep as I'm going to get into in this format. All right. Now, when it comes to actually recording each episode, you're going to want to do a few things with the episode. You're going to want to obviously edit it together, probably using Audacity or something like that. You're going to want to have an intro, and you're going to want to put that on the beginning. Now, if you don't want to invest to have a nice intro made, which I'm about to invest to have a new intro made for this show, then you can record one on your own. Or you could just not have an intro and just make the intro part of the episode itself. So kind of like every time I come on here and say, welcome back to Coffee Break Blogging, blah, blah, blah. You could do the exact same thing on yours. You don't have to have a music reel before it, but you can. And you can hire people on Fiverr to make them. You can, there are services out there that will make those if you want to do it. So you tack those things together, export it, and then you're going to want to use an app that allows you to do ID3 tags. ID3 tags are these little hidden fields inside of an MP3 file that will allow you to insert the title of the episode, the information for your podcast itself, and the artwork into the actual MP3 file. Now, the reason you want that is so that when you are, let's say somebody is playing your podcast on their phone, your artwork and the title will actually show up on their home screen. Now, not with the icons. We're talking just when you hit the power button, it'll actually show up there as the thing that you're actively playing. Okay? So this is all stuff that you can control with the ID3 tags. All right. Moving on to launch a little bit, because I don't want this episode to get too long. How do you launch this bad boy? Well, once you've got it set up technically on WordPress with the settings set in PowerPress, you are going to need to go to iTunes and submit your podcast to iTunes. You're going to basically submit your podcast RSS feed to them, and they're going to need to approve it before it shows up. Now, they're not like rough on that or anything, so you're not going to have any problem getting it approved. It might take them, a day or two. I don't remember how long it took them for me. And then you'll be in iTunes. Okay. But here's what you want to do. This is the key, is that at the very beginning, as soon as they release your podcast into iTunes, you want to have a marketing strategy already in place so that you can hit the button and start it when they put that thing into iTunes. Because if you want to get into new and noteworthy, which is not difficult at the very beginning, you want to drive as many downloads of this podcast in a short amount of time as you possibly can. And so anything that you can bring to the table in order to bring more podcast downloads in that very short period of being a new and noteworthy, you need to do it. So that means you go to your email list and announce every episode. Maybe set up have a campaign set up on your blog where you've got a few blog posts written to go out during the launch period, and every single one of them tell them to subscribe to your podcast. Maybe make a few videos and launch them out on your YouTube channel. Email some influencers and tell them about your show and see if they can maybe promote it or, offer yourself up as a guest on theirs, whatever you want to do, but you've got to get the word out and you want to drive as many downloads of your podcast as you can at the very beginning. Now, the other thing is that I mentioned earlier that you want to have several episodes pre-recorded and release very often at the beginning, because the download count thing with iTunes is very much just raw numbers. So there's two ways to get lots of downloads. One is to have many, many people downloading your podcast. The second way is to have maybe less people, but they're downloading a crap load of podcasts. And so hopefully that makes sense. If you have a lot of things for them to download and they see that consistency is happening, you're going to get more downloads. This is one of the reasons why our buddy John Lee Dumas with Entrepreneur on Fire has, long since now rocketed up the stats. He was one of the very first to come out with a daily podcast for entrepreneurs. And because it was daily, he was compounding a lot of downloads. His audience probably wasn't even that big at the beginning, but because he was coming out so often and kind of interviewing the right people and making a name for himself, it compounded. So you can do that with your podcast as well by having 5 to 10 episodes pre-recorded by the time you submit the thing to Apple, or maybe 5 of them. But then you want to have some other ones in the mix so that once they've put that thing into iTunes, you're in new and noteworthy, you probably want to release one per day or one per every couple days for a little while and to build that momentum up. And eventually you're going to settle into your normal publishing schedule, whether it be once a week, twice a week, whatever it might be. But at the beginning, you want to put new episodes out there pretty quick so that everybody's devices out there who subscribe to your podcast, they're downloading it. That's increasing your download metrics and will then raise you in the rankings of iTunes. Now, the other thing that will help raise you in the rankings of iTunes is getting people to review and rate your podcast, which is one of the reasons, and I tend to drop the ball on this one sometimes, that I periodically ask you guys to go and rate and review this podcast, Coffee Break Blogging, inside of iTunes. And in fact, you can go do that at blogmarketingacademy.com/iTunes. That will point you right over into my podcast profile in iTunes, and I would highly appreciate it if you would go and post a star rating and an honest review of what you think of the show. If you are finding this show valuable, if you're finding that you're getting a lot of value of it and you're enjoying it, I would highly appreciate the review inside of iTunes. It helps me out in the rankings inside of iTunes, exposes this show to more people, and that's obviously the game that we all as podcasters play. Okay, so that'll be my call to action for this particular episode. Please go over to blogmarketingacademy.com/iTunes and review the show for me. Okay, thanks for listening to this episode. Once again, if you want to follow along on my little personal trip with the family and kind of like doing the whole RV thing, you can connect to me personally over on Facebook at facebook.com/Risley. Just follow me. You can feel free to post a friend request, but to be honest with you, I don't go through the friend request list all that often, but you can follow me and it's basically the same thing. You can interact with me just the same. And I'd love to talk some non-business with you periodically. Okay, see you next time.